Right then, on to another Amarok video. Last off, well, we're on the dyno. Right then, another Amarok video. Last time out, we were road testing it after we'd been on dyno and maxed out the GTD 2263 turbo. So watch that video if you want to see where we got. I told a little fib, really. I said next thing we'll be putting water meth on, and that's half true because we sort of got halfway there and we're waiting on some machined parts to come to delete the swirl flap actuator and stuff to do a nice neat install. So that's going to fit in with this. I'm not too sure yet. It might be a bit hard for Danny's editing, but anyway, I don't want to wait for that until we get this next turbo in, because I'm sort of bearing in mind that the customer's waiting for this and wants it back as soon as. So Owen's working away now to take the 2263 off, and then we've got this to go on, which we've seen this before and we've talked about it before, but this is the GTD 2872 VRK or VRZK, whatever. We've got loads of different designations for it, but this is ball bearing. It's had it's water cooled, but it's had a ball bearing core put in it. Bigger turbine wheel. Oh, do you want to look at that again, Danny? I didn't get into it. So, compressor wheel, obviously 72mm ex-juicer. It's a 50-52 inducer. So it's pretty big, a lot bigger than the turbine as well, is a lot bigger than the one that's on there. But what we found with these turbos on most cars, the spool pretty good anyway. So we're going to get this whacked on, and we're going to see where we get from where we were with the 2263, the charge temps in and out. I think we're not going to max this out before we get to the intercooler, so we'll slot that in between as well. So we'll get as much as we can with the standard intercooler, but from talking to the guys in Australia that we work with as well, send a lot of parts to them, they reckon we're not far away from where they've seen intercoolers are running out of puff, which it never hurts to have too big of an intercooler anyway. So even before this point, I'd be putting an intercooler on if it were my truck, but it's good to know where it is and what gains you can see when you do it. So we'll get all this thrown on, and then we'll get onto the dyno, and then once we've done the dyno, we'll get onto the road, and hopefully by then we've got the water injection on as well, so we can do a quick flicker of switch and see what difference it makes to smoke output and what have you, and if it makes any difference to power. So see how we get on. So we finally got a chance to get the turbo fitted to the Amarok. We've spent a fair bit of time trying to get exactly what we wanted to get out of it. It's been a bit of a pain, to be honest, like everything has been on this project, but that's what happens when you're doing brand new stuff. It always ends in a bit of pain, but if you get a result you want, it's not a big deal. So we've looked at the logs, we've looked at the fuel and everything. We think there's still a little bit in this, but one thing we have noticed is at this power, if you're swinging, Danny, so 359 and sort of 580 foot-pound of torque there, something thereabouts, we're struggling with the inlet air temps. So we've got an intercooler. We'll see if we can get that fitted and see what difference that makes, because that's definitely not the limit of this turbo. So fingers crossed we get a little bit more out of it. So the Amarok, it's not on the dyno at the minute because we got a little bit rushed when we were doing what we were doing, so we had to get it off and get something else on there. But we've got the 28 turbo on there, obviously not quite pushing it as hard as we want to push it just yet, but the one thing we have noticed, the inlet air temps are creeping up there a little bit higher than we want them to be, which they were getting higher before, but not dangerously so, and we're getting the power that we needed to get, so we weren't too worried. But now we've got goals of sort of knocking on 400 horsepower for this, which the turbo should be fairly easily capable of, but we're stuck at like 359 and just less than 600 foot-pound of torque. And I would like to get a bit more, but I don't want to push the turbo any harder or the rail pressure or anything like that while we know we've got a problem. The back pressure's not the problem, obviously we've not got a problem with that at all. The throttle valves, they're not giving us any trouble now, but the intercooler's showing, I think we're at 70, 80, if you want to push it hard and get 90s. So it's quite high. When we get them sort of figures on like the Polo, Fabia Ibifas, like the old 1.9s or the newer 1.6s, putting intercooler on them gives them 15, 20 horsepower sometimes. So we know it makes a decent difference if you've got decent charge temps, as well as the pressure drop that you're going to be getting when if you've got a small core. But this looks relatively big from the pictures we've seen. I don't think we've ever had one of these intercoolers in our hands. So to speed things up a little bit, the customer originally didn't factor that in, but he just said he wanted 400 horsepower and he got a certain amount of budget, and we tried doing what we can, but obviously we've been R&D, we've got to do what we can. So we've got a Wagner tuning intercooler, so let's rip it apart and have a look, see what it looks like. So yeah, this is a nice core, pretty big, nice connections and all, ribbed for her pleasure. It's got some nice little fins in there to try and direct some of it down to the bottom, because it all just want to go around the top. Little sensor boss there, which I'm assuming that's an intake temp sensor, which it will be. I think there's one on both sides on this as well, which we need to check the logs for that. But yeah, it's Danny's having a job on trying to stop cardboard blowing all over. We'll try and get some videos during the install. Andy's going to do that tomorrow, and yeah, hopefully we can get it straight back on the dyno. I did want to do this while it were on the dyno, so we ain't got the sort of strapping, unstrapping and everything, but it didn't time out nicely, it weren't going to work. We sort of got to the limits of this where we wanted to get as we are, so I'm hoping, not going to quote any figures just yet, but it'd be nice to get a fair few horsepower from just doing this, and a decent, significant EGT drop, which means then we can put some more fuel in there and get a little bit more power. So let's get out of this shade that's freezing, even though it's nice and sunny out there, and yeah, we'll get cracked on. So, Andy finally got the intercooler sorted. It's not that bad a job really. I think 2.5 hours, something like that to do, 2.5 hours. Few bolts have got a bit of Loctite on these that were a bit of a pain to get out for some reason, but it's sorted. That's on there. So last time it were on the dyno, this is what we had. 359 and 580 foot-pound of torque, something like that. Charge temps were getting up 75, 80, 90, depending on how hard you run it, you could get them sort of pretty close to 100. So this is the net gain that we've seen just literally bolting the intercooler on. So it's 15 horsepower more, and the charge temps are down around 30, 40 mark on the dyno. On the road we couldn't get them past 30, but on the dyno 30 to 40 depending how hard and how hot you got it. So quite a significant difference, which obviously we're not in the hottest country that these are sold in. A lot of people in Australia will be pretty happy to see decent gains like that when it's 40 degrees and quite humid outside. So obviously that then has lowered the EGTs a little bit. Not as much as we'd hoped, to be fair. We were hoping for a bit bigger difference to that, but there was no point pushing it any further with charge temps getting that out because we knew we'd start to have some problems. So what we have managed to get is this. So 406 horsepower and another nearly 50, probably 40 foot-pound of torque, 35, 40 foot-pound of torque. So not sure why it seems to have lost a little bit of bomb. It only seems to be on the odd couple of runs that it seems to do with this. I think the stabilisation time's been tweaked with a few times, but we'll do that. It's got to go back up dyno again anyway. We've still got the water injector to put on there. So this 406 horsepower, that came with a little bit more rail pressure. We put the 2700 bar rail pressure sensor in there after we'd done the intercooler test, and now we bumped the rail pressure up a little bit more than we normally do, because normally you can only get 150 bar extra because your sensor can only read 200 bar more than standard rail pressure, 2000 bar on the standard 2200 bar sensor. So put a 2700 bar sensor in, and I believe that's running about 2300 bar, 2300 bar, so it's a decent increase, but these injectors should be able to take it the more modern stuff. They're getting up to 2500 bar setups now on these, so should be fine. But the one thing we have noticed, it was pretty okay, sort of getting up towards 900 EGTs thereabouts during a pull, but when you put it on a long pull that sort of simulate like a fifth gear pull on the road, it got a little bit hotter than we want it to be, and obviously there's no point melting this just in the pursuit of horsepower. So we made another tune, which I'll just hide them one so you can see. But you can see the difference in them there. So we've gone from 406.5, we've dropped a little bit out of it, took us down to 391, which it's took the majority of it is at sort of above 4000 RPM where this starts to get quite hot, and a little bit everywhere else, but it's not a ton different. So it should be, it should still drive very, very similar on the road. Obviously, you're not going to notice that much difference, I wouldn't have thought anyway. But it's going to be a lot safer. So, although the customer did want the 400 horsepower on diesel only if possible, I think the sort of limitations that we're setting in place for the exhaust temperatures, the injector duration, the rail pressure, all that sort of stuff, we don't really want to go any more powerful than that. I'm sure people will push them harder. If it were my own car, push it a bit harder and just see what happens to it. If it melts an engine, then it's my fault, I've got to change engine. But when it's a customer's car, you can't do that. In our terms and conditions, although I believe they're pretty sort of tight, and if something blows up in the pursuit of getting power for a customer, it's their fault. You're still wide open for somebody to say they weren't there pushing your finger on plus button telling them you wanted more and more power. So it is what it is. I think this is pretty good still. Like I say, it'd be nice to keep the 400, but let's get the water injection on there. Let's see what we can do, what power we can get. I don't think it's going to make much difference because I don't really think we're quite on the edge of the fuel pump or the injectors as such. We're sort of getting plenty of fuel. Just the thing with MEF, you probably don't get the fuel exactly when you want it because obviously it's not timed. It's just going in when the air goes in. So we'll see what we can do. I'm not hoping for miracles. If we could just tip past 400 with water injection, have like a 30% ethanol mix or something like that, that'd be absolutely perfect. I think the customer will be very happy with that. Hopefully he's happy with this as it is anyway. It should drive a lot better, which leads us on to the next video. All being well, if everything goes to plan, it'll be on the road with a performance box, and we'll see how much quicker 0 to 60 actually is. So fingers crossed, we're all good. But if anybody wants to know what these will do, all the products that are on this are listed on the website. They're in the description. Get them bought. Get it tuned. Cheers.